What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA show presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with 150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/All-NBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler, for a casual Friday edition of the show. Legs, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm doing all right. You know, we had a full slate last night, but it didn't really shape out the way we thought. I mean, there's some interesting storylines we're going to get to in a second, but overall, I was kind of more excited about what looked like some matchups that could give us, you know, some really compelling games played at a high level. There wasn't a lot of that last night, unfortunately.
Warriors-Grizzlies was going to be the marquee game. Can't wait to talk Warriors-Grizzlies on Friday, but you know what? I don't know. Well, we'll get to that one very quickly, but I don't know if we'll spend time. We are going to hop around the league, so we're going to touch on a handful of games. We're going to deep dive on two of those. Those would be the Pacers and the Suns game, but we're going to start with the Chicago Bulls taking down the Boston Celtics in the Garden. Did not expect this one at all. Zach LaVine, who is in trade rumors, goes for 36 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, shoots 6 of 11 from the three-point line, and helps lead them to victory. There were some technical fouls at the end. There was some chippery. What stood out to you about this one, Legs?
Well, the first thing that stood out was if there are people that have a problem with the NBA, and, you know, you hear a lot of criticisms about the league right now for different reasons. I thought this game epitomized a big part of like why people are having a problem with the league right now.
Yeah.
There were 108 3-point shots taken in this game.
That's a lot.
Okay, that you're talking
That's
all-star game type numbers. And some of these possessions felt like it was an all-star game. Like first guy to touch it with any sort of space whatsoever, go ahead and shoot a three on both teams. And look, that's one thing for Chicago. It's obviously an anomaly for them to shoot 52. But when you play Boston in Boston, it's almost like the mindset going in is, well, you're going to have to make and take certain amount against the Celtics to have a shot because you know what they're capable of. They're making 19 a night. It's an NBA record. So you know you got to come with – you might shoot more on a given night against them than you normally do as a team. So I'm actually not as – surprised that they would get up to 52. They made 19, 36.5%, not horrific, efficiency or anything. I almost expect them to have to do that, like coming in. For Boston to take 56 of them, make 14, 25%. The number of possessions I watched that they made it the game so easy for Chicago. And, if you do that to a team, and they're not a good team, but they're a mediocre to average team in the NBA, Chicago. If you play that way offensively, Adam, where you don't treat possessions the way that they're supposed to be treated based on what the defense is allowing you. And what I mean by that is, they're allowing you to take the first 28-footer, but you know what else? They're also allowing you to have a lot of dribble drive action to get the second kick out where on that second time a guy gets a decent look, it's a much better shot. Or the third time, how about that? How many closeouts I watched in this game that Boston didn't even try to attack guys? They just shot it. And if you do that on a night when you're cold collectively, this can happen to you. Yeah. No excuse for them to lose Chicago at home. But when you take 56 shots out of your 97 field goal attempts, every single guy on your team, basically half your shots was a three or more. You're
way
literally
way more.
Way more in some cases. I mean, I'll go right down the list. Tatum, 11 of his 22 threes. Kristaps, 7 for 17 at threes. 4 out of 8 for Holiday. 12 out of the 14 shots Derek White took were threes. 8 out of the 17 for Jaylen Brown. So there's your starting lineup. That's basically half of your 3-point. Half your shots were threes. You go out to the bench. Peyton Pritchard, 10 of his 12. He actually had a decent night. I mean, that's kind of what he's been doing. So you kind of expect that. So they basically gift wrap this for Chicago. Here you go. We're going to make ourselves as easy to guard as possible. And I know we take a lot of threes every night, but tonight we're especially going to make it easy for you because we're just going to take the very first one we see. And that to me was what Boston did this entire game. And then you end up in a situation, you get down to a certain margin in the fourth quarter and it's too late. You can't come back. There's not enough time. And that's kind of what happened to Boston in this game.
It's crazy that you say the All-Star game. It reminds you of an All-Star game with the shot profile because I just looked it up and you're right. I mean, outside of last year where I think there was like 150 threes taken, last year was the craziest year ever, 211 points for the winning team. But if you go back 2023, 2020, you're right. It's about 110 threes that are taking in the All-Star game. And now that is the regular default NBA setting when two teams match up. So I'm with you. I don't love it, but it is the state of the NBA that we live in. I do want to ask you about Zach LaVine, though. 11 of 19. He goes for 36 points. Big night from him. And I'm just kind of curious how you evaluate him as a player, but also what you saw from him last night.
Well, it's funny because we talked about this yesterday, right? And some of the trade stuff, or maybe it was the day before. No. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm watching the Bulls, start to finish a lot of nights. I did last night. And I'm watching Zach LaVine. And you know what? I'm sitting there going, you know what? I understand why teams might want to go get this guy. Because of what we said with Denver, even, his name came up with the Denver stuff with Michael Porter Jr. and whatnot. And I think your point was, and I think I really saw it on display last night, Denver doesn't have a lot of guys that can go get theirs off the dribble and handle a ball screen and get to a shot or get an ISO, with 8 seconds left in the clock on the wing and get something really good for yourself off the dribble, whether it's mid-range, deep, or at the rim. Zach LaVine is a very accomplished scorer, and it comes easy to him. And last night, Boston couldn't guard him. He got to wherever he wanted to get. And particularly the big shots, he made some big ones in the fourth quarter that really stopped Boston's attempt to really get serious about a run and get this thing to, you get the thing within 5-6 points with 5 minutes to go. Boston probably going to win that game. Zach LaVine made sure that didn't happen. And I'm watching him in his overall skill set and how smooth he is and how he glides around the court and how easy it is for him to score. And he's playing on a team that, not a lot of people pay attention to. They're not going anywhere. If you put him in an environment where the games matter, where he's playing with really smart players, but they desperately need what he brings, which is his ability to just flat out score on people, and he could do it any one of the three platforms. I was watching it last night very impressed and thinking about what a difference maker he potentially could be. Forget, whatever you think of him as a defender or whatever. That's not what his calling card is. Like, if you need a guy to give you some more power, some firepower, some scoring punch, Zach LaVine is the guy because he does it very effortlessly, and he put it on full display last night. I was very impressed the way he played.
What about his court vision and his passing? I mean, part of this thing is how I view him is when he's a number one or number two guy, you need both, right? You need scoring and you need playmaking. If he becomes a number three guy, a la Michael Porter in Denver, you don't necessarily need the passing. It's like, okay, he's a scorer. He's playing off of your main actions. And if he gets some passes out of there, great, but you're really looking for that. But do you think he is more than that? Or is that probably his role is he can't be your primary or secondary facilitator? He needs to primarily be a scorer.
I think he's primarily, you got to utilize him more as a scorer. He's going to get, a handful of assists most nights because of his usage rate. And look, there's times when, because he gets hot, he's going to draw extra guys on any action he runs. And that makes easy assists to find for him. But he's not the kind of guy that's going to go and make, consciously make difficult passes or make breakdowns of the defense, knowing that on the back end of it, I'm going to be finding this guy because the action is going to dictate this. I don't think he thinks the game that way. I think he thinks the game as a scorer. He tries to get into his shot. He's got a nice mid-range pull-up lean back that's kind of tough to guard, tough to defend. He gets off the floor effortlessly from deep. So I think for me, he's more of a raw scorer. But a guy that you can give the ball to early in the clock to go create offense. And I think there are teams that can really use what he brings. And I just thought last night in a game that really, I felt like the whole time I just wanted to go take a shower and rinse myself of what I was watching because it was so monotonous. It was so monotonous to watch Boston play offensively. And to a lesser extent Chicago. Like I said, they knew coming in they're going to have to do certain things offensively to try to stay in the game. For Boston, it was filthy. It was gross to watch them play that way. And I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, watch out. This is how you get them, because it was obvious to me they were flat because it was the Bulls. And they thought they could get away playing this way. But the problem I have is, Adam, where was the adjustment when you're just possession after possession is empty because collectively your entire team outside of Peyton Pritchard can't make a three? Where's the adjustment with all of that offensive talent and versatility to get downhill, break the defenses down, and get into multiple drive and kick action where teams chase you? And that's when you look unbeatable. Why does that not happen middle of the third quarter? When you realize, you know what, timeout, bring it in. Let's talk about this. All right, let's go downhill. I want downhill right now. We can beat all of these guys off the dribble. Downhill, make them chase us. Let's get into Boston Celtics basketball at our best. They never did it. They just kept on with the same mentality, hunt the first shot you see, and you allow the Bulls to win. So you think if the Celtics ever did play this way in a big spot, yeah, they're susceptible, man, if they're going to play this way. You think that they wouldn't be this dramatic with it on a night when they're not shooting well in a playoff series. And that's why I'm not going to put too much into it. But at the same time, it was a really boring, monotonous, lazy way to play offense.
Yeah. And just to take people behind the curtain here, in the mornings, usually when there's like a late Nuggets game in particular, text Legs, hey, what do you want to talk about? He'll send me some notes. And I really want to talk about Celtics Bulls. And I'm thinking, I can't wait. I can't wait to hear. What is it? Player shined? Is it Zach LaVine? Nope, it's really pissed at the Celtics. So I was a little surprised that's what it was. Is there any other notes from this game that you found interesting? Actually, one guy I want to ask you about, one of my favorite players is Lonzo Ball. Obviously been through a lot. He's just a role player now, but his numbers never reflect it. 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 points. It's nothing. But I just love what he brings to the team, especially in this limited role that he's in, because like for the, being a 7th man, 8th man, whatever he is at the moment, he just does a million things. He's like a little mini Derek White, and that he does a lot of winning things at a really, really, really high level. So did anything about him stand out to you last night or through the season?
Listen, not particularly last night. I agree with a lot of what you said about him. I just think he's a guy that promotes good offense because of how decisively he gets the ball onto the next place. And I've said this about him since really he got into the league. He exists solely to make you look good as a teammate. You got to love guys like that. That's how he plays. Now, he didn't have a very good night last night, but I'm sure, it doesn't show up, but there were plays I could go pick out where Lonzo Ball promoted ball movement by his first decision, right? Because a lot of times, and this is what I'm talking about, a lot of times that first decision in the game last night was a shot. That's the first thing the guy, whoever, either team, first pass, go to the wing. I got 4 feet of space, shoot it, right? Lonzo Ball will not do that. So therefore, he will promote maybe on that possession that the ball then will have 2 or 3 more passes that take place after that because of his first decision. Those are things that I think promote winning basketball. So I'm a fan of his, man. I think he brings a lot. I was rooting for him when he was out. Good to have him back. It wasn't necessarily his most impactful game since he's been back last night.
Sure.
He struggled. One other guy that I would mention, I thought played well last night was Vucevic. They out-rebounded Boston by 11, which shouldn't happen, first of all. But they got him by 11. He had 14 boards in the game, 7 for 9. In a game that was really 108 threes were taken in the game, and he also a capable three-point shooter. And he was actually 2 for 3 in the game last night from the 3. But like in a game where if you're a big guy, you almost have to feel like, what am I doing out here? What am I doing? Like by the time I change into the floor, somebody shot it, and it's easy to get trapped into that. Well, I'm just going to jog from 3-point line back to the lane. And, it's one of those nights like big guys actually play in the All-Star game. I mean,
it's true.
Right. Like look at Jokic. How much does Jokic hate playing in the All-Star game? I can't even imagine what that must be like for him or any big, any center in the NBA that plays in that game and what it's turned into, especially now. And Vucevic, to his credit, didn't play that way last night, or he didn't get wrapped up in the fact that, he only got 9 shots in a night. He was feeling pretty good with 108 threes taken in the game. He was like, no, I'm just going to go do my thing and I'm going to continue to rebound. And I thought his ability to limit Boston to one shot on some of those possessions, because Boston will kill you on the rebound, kick out, second three on that possession. They murder you on the chaos plays. And they didn't really get those last night. And Vucevic was a big part of that, cleaning up the defensive glass.
I like the take. Any other thoughts on Boston? Was there anybody over there that stood out to you other than what we discussed?
I just felt like Jason Tatum had a 31-10 night, and you're like, all right.
Yeah, this is the other problem with the NBA. Like we were talking
the way he played at all last night. At all. And the other thing is this. He had no offensive rebounds. So what does that tell you? You got he's like 6'9", athletic wing that should be shooting the ball from over the floor, right? But obviously you take a lot of threes yourself. You're not in position to rebound. But what about all the other shots, the other long rebounds that came off of your team's missed shots? How does he not get one offensive rebound? Like that's the kind. And Jaylen Brown had one. So between the two of them, they had one offensive rebound. Like two of the most athletic forwards in the league. And these are long rebounds because you're missing so many threes. And you're telling me that you can't go grind it out a different way? So I don't want to be hard on Jason Tatum, man. I'm a fan of Jason Tatum's, but there are times he plays. I just don't like watching him offensively, man, because I think he settles so often. And, any night that he takes 11 threes, I think it's helping you out.
Yeah, I think you're right. That was an ugly one, but we got more ugly games to talk about on the other side, including the Phoenix Suns losing for just the third time when Kevin Durant is in the starting lineup. We'll get to that one, as well as the Pacers are starting to get their offense going a little bit. We'll take a break. We'll be back on the other side. First, let me tell you about Constant Contact. We'll talk about goals for a minute. How are you tracking with the ones you set for your business earlier this year? Are you close? And if not, do you know why you haven't hit them yet? Constant Contact has what it takes to help you meet them faster. No matter how experienced you are with digital marketing, Constant Contact has the tools to make your marketing run smoother. You can sell more, raise more, and build more genuine relationships with your audience with Constant Contact's suite of digital marketing tools, all made to fast track your success. You no longer need to struggle with expensive, slow, and unmeasurable approaches to your marketing or business. You can get tap email marketing that helps you create and send perfect emails to every customer, own the smartphone by adding texting to your marketing strategy, connect with over 2 billion people on social media with an all-in-one tool for posting and sharing, and sell more online in less time with Constant Contact's powerful e-commerce tools. It's time to put the go in your 2024 business goals with email, social, SMS, and customized marketing campaigns built for you in just a few clicks. Go to ConstantContact.com/allcity and start your free trial today. That's ConstantContact.com/allcity for your free trial. Also want to tell you guys about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL with FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets when you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, like I did last night, that the Broncos were about to collapse in the second half. Man, that one was painful. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com/AllNBA to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com/AllNBA. Must be 21 and older, in Colorado. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. If you have a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-522-4700. All right, back here, Friday edition of the All-NBA show. Let's move on now to the Pacers beating the Suns 120-111. The Suns had been on a roll whenever Kevin Durant was in the lineup. He's in the lineup last night, as was Bradley Beal and Devin Booker, and yet it was the starters who coughed up this lead. The Pacers roll and get the win on the road. So what happened in this game, Legs?
Well, third quarter was the difference in the game. It was really entertaining first half, back and forth, tight game going into the second half. Suns actually had a lead early in the third quarter, and then it kind of all fell apart. And it really, to me, came down to the fact that for a specific stretch in that quarter, Indiana got rolling on a level that reminded me a lot of last year. Like, the advanced passes, the pace that the ball was getting up the floor. I'll give Haliburton some credit, but it wasn't just him. Everybody was playing fast, and they were basically beating whoever was in front of them off the dribble the entire quarter to get into the lane, whether that meant something for themselves at the rim or then would lead to a kick out for an open three. They had 37 points in the quarter, and it was a situation where Phoenix just couldn't guard them. And next thing you know, you go from a 2-point lead to down 13 in a very short period of time. And then from that point on, you're just playing catch up. And the question is, can you string together enough stops to give you a chance? And they never really did. Indiana we all know that Indiana did not resemble the team they were a year ago for most of this season. They've actually had some nights recently where it's been better. So maybe they now collectively are looking in the mirror, watching enough film to realize, you could pair this with what we were doing a year ago. It doesn't look like that. It's not as hard to defend. They were last night in the third quarter, and Phoenix didn't really have a response for that defensively. It was a very soft, passive defense on the part of the Phoenix Suns. There wasn't a lot of resistance. If you could beat your man off the dribble, you weren't meeting a lot of resistance in the paint at all. And that, to me, it was the difference in the game. That's where the tide turned. And then from that point on, Phoenix was just not able to sustain enough runs to make it really interesting.
I want to talk about Haliburton here because they're on a 3-game win streak, and in those 3 games, he has double-doubles, double-figure assists, which is only the second time this year he's had 3 straight games with double-figure assists, which is kind of interesting. And it's also 3 straight games where he's made at least 40% of his threes. I know you said it's not all him. It almost feels like it's a lot him, though. He is the engine to that team, and when he plays well, they seem to win. And at least he strung together 3 games in a row where he looks like his old self.
3 games in a row. I mean, the Phoenix last night is their signature win of the 3, because you got New Orleans, who are really a bad team, and then at Philly, who's really shorthanded right now. Still a good win on the road against them, but this is the signature win for them. And this is interesting now because you get a little bit of momentum. I'm trying to see it. They one other time all year they won 3 games in a row. So this is now feels like, hey, okay. They definitely were disappointed with the way they had played. There was a lot of rumblings there about what was going to happen. I think even some questions about Rick Carlisle going forward. I think they're still wondering about what to do with Miles Turner as they get closer to the trading deadline. They've got a lot of similar players that they're trying to figure out the minutes and the minutes allocation. There's been very little consistency out of their guys, other than probably TJ McConnell, who's been sensational all year. It's been very inconsistent from night to night, but it does start with Haliburton. I agree with you. When Haliburton plays with a certain bounce in his step and a certain liveliness and confidence, swagger, they look different. And he's had a little bit more of that here lately than he had to start the year. He had a shooting slump, and I think it got into his head, and he lost a little bit of confidence. And even now, I still don't think he's processing all the time, like when to be aggressive as a player, whether that's turn the corner downhill or shoot a 3. He still seems a little bit like it's an afterthought for him right now to score. They're better when he's more aggressive and looking for that.
What did you see from the Phoenix Suns defense, though? Because you're right that part of this was being able to get into the teeth of the defense. And that's one of the questions I have for the Suns is just what are their better defensive lineups for each matchup? And last night they didn't defend well. So what did you see from them on that end of the floor?
I saw guys on the perimeter that they were not committed to the effort that it takes to keep the ball in front of you initially. And then once you were able to get past that guy, Nurkic is not a presence in there. We know that. That's not really his thing. Now, he'll clean up the defensive glass pretty well for you after a miss, but he's not a deterrent. He's not going to step up and provide a presence in there. He's not like a big-time rim protector. He is a good rebounder on both ends. That's his primary function. But once you were able to get past your guy, I just did not see a desperate, committed, flood to the penetration type of defense that you see out of the good defensive teams. And look, no one's calling them a good defensive team. They can be really good offensively to the point that it overcomes a lot of that. And that's why you and I both said yesterday, this is one of the most interesting teams in the league over the next month. Now that Durant's back, of course, Booker goes out last night in the third quarter with a groin strain. So it's like they can't keep all these 3 guys on the court together to save their lives. But we both think they're interesting. Their defense has to play harder. It's that simple. They have to be a little bit more determined to make it harder for teams. And I thought it was very easy for Indiana last night most of the time.
Yeah, I agree with you. Are there any other players that stood out? I mean, actually, one question I want to ask you is, we are the weekend before Christmas, and as we look at the slate, we've talked about 2 games where we thought we had uncharacteristic effort or just, attention to detail. We haven't even talked about the Denver game. there's a handful of other games that match this. Do you think there's something to, it's a week before a holiday and it's maybe the most distracting time of the year outside of maybe the
No.
week before the All-Star break?
Yeah, I do think there's a little bit of that builds in this time of the year. I do agree with that. Some of these teams that are going to be playing on Christmas Day, and know that like they're going to travel Christmas Eve, they're going to play Christmas Day, right? So like this is the time when you're kind of maybe now you're almost spending a little bit more of that time that you would normally spend on those couple of days. So I do think there could be a little bit of a lull. I saw some pretty flat teams last night around the league. I know that, man. And the scores indicate it. There were some weird scores last night in the league. There was very little late game drama across the league, despite the fact that there was almost an entire full slate where every team practically was in action. We had very few big possessions in the last 3 minutes last night. We just didn't get that. So that sometimes indicates that guys are a little bit getting into that mode here, pushing into the holidays, and the reset button comes a little bit later.
Man, the Pacers might have saved their season with these 3 wins because they're at 13-15, and this is their upcoming schedule legs. They were at Phoenix last night, so they go at Sacramento, at Golden State, home for Oklahoma City, then back-to-back games at Boston, Milwaukee, Miami, Phoenix. That's 10 games, all of which they're probably going to be underdogs. That is an insane stretch, a really tough stretch. So the fact that they got up to 13-15 might have been a miracle that will help them survive this really tough stretch.
Yeah, 4 out of those 5 on the road, like you mentioned. Sac struggling right now. Golden State, got blasted last night.
Got to win those ones.
Home to back-to-back. You got to spend 2. Talk about distracting and tough. You got to go back-to-back against Boston between Christmas and New Year's. You got to spend basically 4 days in Boston over the holidays to take on the best team in the league in their building. So that's somebody was cruel to them. And then you come home and you get a red hot Milwaukee team. Yeah, man, this is one of the toughest stretches they've had, and they're finally getting themselves back to like, okay, getting closer to like the version we want to be of ourselves. 13-15 looks a lot different than 10-15, and they've gotten themselves to that. But now you're going to hit this really tough stretch here. If they play with the pace that they played last night for most of that game, they're going to be in good shape, particularly in these first 2 against Sacramento and Golden State.
My favorite game of the night, not that it was good, but that it had a great storyline, was the Knicks going into Minnesota and getting a win, and Karl-Anthony Towns' return to his former team. And how did he fare? Phenomenally. Absolutely dominant performance from him as he gets 32 points, 20 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals, is a plus 31, shot 10 of 12 from the field and 5 of 5 from three-point line. I got to be honest with you. Karl-Anthony Towns very sneakily has become a good big game player. He's performed well in big games. It was not his reputation early on and for most of his career, but last year and this year, he has shown up for big ones. This is a big one in terms of just the emotional, returning to the team that drafted you, and he was sensational.
He's impressed me, man. We talked about him a little bit as one of the guys that's, has really impressed us to this point in the season. The opposite of the disappointment list. He's been great, man. And you're right. And even last year, he did not shoot the ball well from the 3-point line. In the postseason, as their season finished up, he definitely would like to have that series back, I'm sure, because of the way he shot the ball from the 3. And so, yeah, I mean, there have been moments where you kind of wonder that about him, how he's going to come through. But there's a lot of pressure the day he put a Knick uniform on. Every game, to me, had more pressure than any games he played in Minnesota. And so he's embraced that, man. He's answered it every single night. He went in there, and look, there would be no reason for people in Minnesota to boo him. It's not like Karl-Anthony Towns pounded the table and said, "Get me out of here," or like didn't show up for camp, or something like that. Like, this guy played. He showed up every night and he played. He's a good dude. So, there's nothing he did that in any way, shape, or form would have been, welcome to see him leave town, to where you greet him with some really nasty response when he comes back. So he probably, because of that, he came in and he was very comfortable. Sometimes that can be a little bit unnerving if you come in and they're really ready. They're ready to pounce on you. It can be a little bit of a weird environment for guys that maybe he didn't get that kind of treatment. And in a building he's very comfortable in. 10 for 12 from the field, 5 for 5 from the 3, 7 for 9 from the free throw line. You don't get much more efficient than that to go with 20 boards, 6 assists. Man, that's a monster night. By the way, Julius Randle had a great first half, but overall 24 and 5, 8 for 17, like a decent night, but he had a very good first half. Problem was they couldn't guard the Knicks at all. New York built up this 20-point lead. You knew it. They were up 20. And so at that point, it didn't really matter really what Julius Randle was going to do. Anthony Edwards had a pretty quiet night for him, 17 points. They didn't get much out of the rest of their supporting cast at all. Rough night for Minnesota. The Knicks looked really sharp, and really this whole night was about Karl-Anthony Towns returning to Minnesota. How is he going to handle it? How is he going to play? And also, here's the question I have for you. So not based on last night, but I mean, if you're ever going to, make your final point of an argument, it would be last night. Is it clear to you Knicks got the better of that trade? And did you think that the day it happened?
We wondered about it if it was a lose-lose trade early on with how clunky both teams looked. I think Minnesota definitely has the short end of the stick. I've never been a Randall fan, and I have not liked both his fit and just like the potential with him there. That being said, I'm still a little skeptical on the Knicks, more because of the loss of Hartenstein than anything. But I think it's clear that Karl-Anthony Towns has adjusted to being in a different role on a different team pretty quickly. And he just looks good, man. Karl-Anthony Towns, I don't know where we put him in terms of like the best bigs in the NBA, because he's always kind of been in that lower rung. But I think that he is making headway. It's almost like his early career reputation is not fitting of where he's at right now. And he's just been very impressive to me over the last 2 seasons, but really increasingly so with the Knicks.
I think it's very fair, man. And I am pleasantly surprised at how easily he has adapted to all of this.
Yeah.
He played with a guy that was a high volume guy usage wise in Anthony Edwards, but nothing like Brunson. I mean, Brunson, right? That's a totally different animal. But to Jalen Brunson's credit, I think he has sacrificed some of what he normally hunts offensively to assimilate Karl-Anthony Towns. So I give him credit for that too. And look, some of the losses they've had were either shorthanded or I just think was still getting to know each other pretty well. That was impressive last night. That was one of the more impressive games I've watched the Knicks play all year.
One thing that's interesting about the Knicks, though, is that I think they are a really tough matchup for traditional bigs. And, your teams that are built around some kind of anchor center. And Rudy Gobert last night just had no role in this game, only played 22 minutes. They were murdered in those 22 minutes. But I think it's a specifically tough matchup because of their ability to spread you out. They play small, they play fast. And I just wonder if that's something to kind of watch throughout this as the season goes, because when we get to the postseason, you might see a Knicks versus a lineup or a team that depends on a big. And I'm just curious if they were built to beat teams with centers.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's going to be, he gives you a lot of flexibility with what you want to do for Tibbs and how you want to utilize him, what kind of lineups you want to play, particularly when he's playing more as a power player, which I thought he was last night. It gives you more options because he can also morph into a guy can be basically a perimeter shooter on a given night and beat you that way. He could catch it, drive through attacking closeout guy. He's very good at driving the ball from the top of the key to his right hand, getting all the way to the rim. He's just got a lot of versatility about his game, man. And he looks like one of the things I think was questioned about Karl-Anthony Towns was his maturity level has always been something that everybody questioned. And I don't think you can be immature or emotionally immature and handle this entire situation the way that he has.
It's a great point.
Give him credit, man. And look, maybe he was immature at one point, but if he was, I think he's grown up, man, a little bit. This whole process, going through some tough times over the last couple of years. He had some injuries. He didn't play particularly well in the playoffs. Go to New York, a lot of scrutiny. That's a lot to handle if you are immature. Well, he's handled it really, really well, man. So let's give him a lot of credit because it takes a lot of backbone to go into this situation and play as well as he has.
The next person I want to talk about, or the team, I should say, the San Antonio Spurs get the win over the Atlanta Hawks, 133-126 in overtime, but it was Victor Wembanyama, 42 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, 4 blocks. His stat lines are becoming increasingly ridiculous. What stood out to you about or what do you take away, I should say, from this game? And that stat line in particular.
You remember yesterday we did 3 predictions?
Yeah.
Right? And one of I almost went with Victor Wembanyama will be the first player since they recorded all of this to have a 60, 20, 15, 5 game with 5 blocks.
60
points. Like, you know what I thought to myself? And I was like, damn, when's the last time anybody had a 60-20 game? And you know what came up? Luka.
Really? Yeah, that sounds right.
That's insane. I was like, that just was like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm thinking 60-20. You got to go back to, I was thinking for sure, you had to go back I was like, man, maybe Shaq. I think Shaq only had 61 time, I believe. Yeah. So that's what I was thinking. Like, and it turns out Luka just did it not that long ago. But anyway, I was almost going to say that about Wembanyama. But yeah, this was a great win for them. And look, man, San Antonio, you sit here 27 games in. You're exactly 1/3 of the way into the season, and they're over 500. Yep. I did not see that coming. Didn't necessarily love the veteran additions they brought in. I thought, okay, Harrison Barnes, Chris Paul, great. You know, what's Chris Paul got left? How much is he going to play? When's he going to get hurt? Harrison Barnes, like solid. That's about it. It's like solid, nice player. But you know, I'm not putting all this on them. But hey, whatever. It's working right now at San Antonio. And you look up, San Antonio Spurs are right there, half game out of the play-in. They've almost caught Golden State.
They're in the hunt. I kind of think they're going to hang around. I mean, part of me thinks that they can hang around here. I mean, their schedule, I'm very excited for them. You know, they have a weird game on Christmas. They play the Knicks. It's the interconference game that's kind of starts off the Christmas slate, but I'm excited for them to kind of be elevated into that status. They get the marquee game, and then we're going to see them in a playoff hunt down the stretch for the first time, which is its own sort of battle for them. I just kind of think the Spurs might hang around. Chris Paul last night, 8 assists, 12 points, 7 rebounds, just doing a lot of stuff, plus 17. It just 4 steals. It just feels like that team has enough talent to hang around all year.
Wembanyama is obviously the guy that, you know, statistically is going to open your eyes the most. But when you look beyond him, I'm going to throw Chris Paul in there as a double figure guy. He's 9.7. That's basically double figures. That means most nights you're getting double figures. I mean, they got 7 guys averaging double figures after Wembanyama.
Yeah.
So they're getting it from a lot of different places. It's like, you know, who knows on a given night, Wemby, go do your thing. Give us 25 to 35. Like that's most nights. And then, hey, can I have 2 other guys, you know, like maybe be around that 20-point mark? We'll have a really good chance to win a lot of nights. And they've been getting that. And it's not always from the same places. So, and you know, and also dealing with Pop not being there, that's got to be a major adjustment for them. They've handled it pretty well. And San Antonio's over 500. Well, by the way, that's pretty incredible. That's 11 teams in the Western Conference that are over 500, which is pretty impressive as well.
Another game to talk about, the Grizzlies, 144 with Golden State Warriors 93 and legs. That makes it sound closer than it actually was. This game was 57 points at one point. Again, we didn't watch this game. Why would you? It was a blowout. But when you see a 57-point lead, you know, what goes through your mind?
Well, you see that kind of thing in the NBA, you at 100% right off the bat without seeing 1 second of it. You know for a fact Golden State didn't show up to play.
Yeah.
Whatever reason, they were not in the right mindset. You don't get taken to school like that, down 50 plus in an NBA game with NBA talent, particularly when you're a team like Golden State, unless you just flat out, for whatever reason, were not ready to play when this game started. And it clearly weren't. They were down 37-15 at the end of the first quarter. Steph Curry, 0 for 7.
It's crazy.
And I didn't see any data on this. When's the last time Steph Curry played more than 20 minutes in a game without a field goal? Has it ever happened? I don't even know.
Man,
has that ever happened to Steph Curry before? 24 minutes, no field goals. He had 2 free throws only in the game. Listen, it's funny because this is one of the games I had set. I recorded it because, you know, you can't get it to them all. Some of these games overlap. And I'm like, okay, I'll record this game. I do want to watch most of it at some point later on in the night. And then I accidentally caught the score on my phone. And I said to myself, well, thank you. You saved me the investment. Now, I probably would have turned it on for about 4 minutes anyway.
I was going to say, it wouldn't have taken you that long.
It wouldn't have taken me long. but at least it told me, okay, there's no point in watching this at all because I know for a fact Golden State didn't come ready to play, period. What's interesting is too, that game, I feel like those two teams, I still feel like there's something there between them.
Ooh, I love this.
It's also greatly diminished without Dylan Brooks. Right?
Yeah.
Dylan Brooks to me is what elevated that whole thing between those two teams. And he's not there anymore. So, the edge isn't quite the same when they play. And if one team shows up and they're not interested in playing basketball on a given night, this is what happens to you.
So, super producer James just looked it up, and this is the 7th time that Steph Curry has gone scoreless, but it's the first time he's played over 11 minutes. So this was 24 minutes. So to your point, your qualifier was 20 minutes or more, and he goes over. And this is, the first time he's played that many minutes, which is a sign, I suppose.
Watch history last night in a bad way.
Yeah, made a little history. The other game, and I think the last one we'll talk about, my beloved Denver Nuggets, just a horrible loss. 2 weeks ago, they lost to the Washington Wizards. Last night, they lose to the Trailblazers. Unfortunately, I just said this about some of the other teams. We're deep enough into them. We kind of know who they are. We're 25 games into the Nuggets season, and they're just capable of losing to the worst teams in the NBA. Last night, it was defense, 126 for the Portland Trailblazers. The Nuggets trailed the whole game, came back at the end, but a blow-by on the final play and absolutely no help-side defense from Nikola Jokic. You never see a game-winning half-court isolation layup. That's how the Nuggets go down last night. It was a buzzer beater, but it was a layup buzzer beater. I'll tell you this, Legs. My concern with the Nuggets, Jokic has had a phenomenal monster season for the first 20-something games of the season. The last few, he's really been in a weird mood, a weird pouty mood. And I know he put up numbers last night, but the defense has been really bad this year, and none worse than it was last night. And, they haven't played a lot of games. You'd say maybe it's fatigue. They've only played like 3 games in 10 days. So I'm a little worried about the Denver Nuggets. I know they just won 3 in a row before this one, but when Jokic doesn't look right, I worry about the team.
Yeah, it speaks to his talent and I didn't see this game. If it speaks to his talent that he can have that kind of a game when you're basically kind of sounds like you're indicating like wasn't typical Jokic. Like he just wasn't not the same level of urgency that he typically plays with. And he still ends up with 34 points on 13 for 18 on a game. And maybe he wasn't as engaged as you would have liked him to be. I'm watching, I didn't see any game, but I'm sitting as we're sitting here, I'm watching this last play you're talking about. That's just absolutely inexcusable. You let a guy ISO last possession of the game, get to his strong hand all the way to the rim from 35 feet, basically unimpeded, and shoot a little short, very easy shot off the glass to win the game. That's embarrassingly bad defense in that situation.
Where do you see the breakdown when you watch that? And I mean, if you have it right there, I know you're just watching it, but I mean, obviously Westbrook gets beat. He allows Simons to go to his right hand. To me, it looks like, the stunt from the corner could have been a little bit deeper. You want to take away a little bit of the lane, but Jokic, he just kind of doesn't move. He's standing under the rim and he's like, all right, we'll see if he makes this.
Yeah. And I'm trying to get the replay up, but I can't. I watched it a couple of times, so I'd like to be able to stop it and break it down a little bit better, but I can't get the play to pop back up. I'm seeing everything else but that. Yeah, you're right though. The weak side never moved. It was the weirdest thing. And there was too much. First of all, too much space was given to the ball handler initially. So that Simons, there's too much distance there. You've got to close that down. First of all, you got to close it down to make it a little bit harder for that guy to change hands and go. And also by doing that, you're also telling the entire back line of defense which way he's going to go so that they're prepared now for help. And you're not going to come off the strong side corner in that situation. That's a sin to give up that easy kick out pass on the strong side for a 3. So that guy's staying home. So where's the help got to come from? It's got to come from the baseline guy in the opposite side of the lane, which is Jokic. And nobody really moved. Simons, that's one of the easiest shots he took all night. And it just so happened to be the one that won the game.
Yeah. I think your point about attacking the ball handler, the other thing it does is those help rotations are earlier, because when you force the move, if you get beat, but you get beat further from the rim, the help side understands what direction things are coming. When you kind of allow that full speed, you don't know left, right, where's it breaking. But more than anything, like I said, Jokic's energy in that game was just so weird. And on that last play, it was that was the energy he kind of had in the game where you're thinking like game's on the line, but sometimes he brings that one, unfortunately. All right, let's preview the weekend slate as we do every single week. This segment is presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook app. You guys can get started. Win $5, you get 200 in bonus bets when you use that code ALLNBA at FanDuel.com/AllNBA. All right, let's look at it. Friday, we got Bucks at Cavs. This is a big-time game. Bucks coming off of that final, that Cup championship. Thunder, Heat, Hornets, Sixers, because why not? But Bucks, Cavs, to me, that's the game of the night and maybe the game of the weekend.
Oh, yeah, that's that. And that, look, it looks like both teams should be pretty much at full strength, so that's even better. The way Milwaukee's playing right now, Giannis, which teams rarely do, players rarely do, mention the Cavaliers by name, not like calling them out, like we're coming for you or anything ridiculous like that. But he mentioned them in a post-game interview after he won the MVP of the Emirates Cup and they won that title. He basically said we're playing great and listed all the reasons why, and then said, now we've got a big test against the Cavaliers. So it's obvious he's already been looking at that game and knowing that, okay, man, this is great. We cleaned up. This thing was on fire early. We got everything back on the tracks. But you know what? The measuring stick, or one of them in this league right now, that's what's really going to tell us more about ourselves. So I'm really curious. Well, not that Giannis doesn't bring it every night, but you might see a little bit extra sauce out of him in this one because I think he knows how important it would be for his team to win a game like that.
That one will be a big one. And like, it was so funny because earlier in the week we talked about what's a bigger game, the Cup final game or that matchup with the Cavs. And you said it was this matchup with the Cavs because the big prize, comes down more to seeding and matchups and things like that. So I think that one's going to be a fantastic game. Get your popcorn ready. Saturday, we've got Grizzlies, Hawks, not a bad game. Sixers, Cavs, probably a bad game. Celtics, Bulls rematch. We love this, Wags, back-to-back against the same team. And then Clippers, Mavs, we didn't talk about it. The Clippers beat the Mavs last night. Mavs not playing their main guys. I suspect they will play them in this matchup, and that one's pretty meaningful. And then Warriors, Wolves, to me, another group of teams that are sort of in the same tier, trying to figure it out. Which directions are going to break? So none of these games to me are like phenomenal games, but there are some good storylines when you look at that slate.
By the way, before we get there, I'm glad one of our people in the chat mentioned this, and I just looked it up to verify. Right, I spoke too soon. Everybody's not at full strength for the Milwaukee-Cleveland game. Damian Lillard's not playing. So
really,
Lillard's out with a calf strain.
Really,
I don't know when that happened, but he's out with a calf strain. So then you won't see him at full strength. So maybe it's
the NBA, baby, the NBA. Let's go! Excited? Are you excited about a matchup? You
spoke too soon, man. Spoke too soon. So yeah, it's weird. We got these rematches because that's the same thing with Clippers, Mavs. And look, Dallas last night. You don't have Luka or Kyrie, so it's like, what are you supposed to derive from that? Now, look, we've been giving the Clippers credit and give them credit, man. They showed up. They won the game. They beat a team. If you're playing them at Dallas Mavericks without Luka Doncic and Damian Lillard, and Kyrie Irving, I got news for you. That's 90% of the league should win that game. 90% of the league should win that game, no matter what Dallas does, who they play. So give the Clippers credit. They showed up, and now you go from being an underdog in that game to being the favorite in that game, and you take care of business. And they continue to play well and impress me with their overall team athleticism and defense. But again, another night with star players out, and it's, you can only take so much from it when you try to analyze the matchup.
Lastly, on Sunday, we've got Pacers Kings. This is the Haliburton Bowl. And also both teams kind of in the same situation where they're falling off. They had some success in previous seasons, but they're falling off. So it's a big game for both teams. Rockets, Raptors, Nuggets, Pelicans. Those are your only three games. Either of those stand out to you?
Yes. And I want you to say it. I want you to say it because I know you're so into the hyperbole. This is a must win for the Denver Nuggets.
Oh no! For my Nuggets, we're in must-win territory already. Oh no!
Against the
Pelicans? Oh no! We already lost to them once.
Oh goodness gracious! All right, so now I'll be glued.
Well, there's no Jokic in that one, but yeah.
Jokic isn't playing.
No. I'm saying when they lost to the Pelicans a couple weeks ago. Yeah. You're right. Look, it is a must-win. They're coming off a loss to the Blazers. You can't just let these things kind of happen, man. There's a funk around Denver right now. I'm telling you. the talent is what it is. They have some deficiencies, but there's a mood to the team that is just I don't love. It's a little concerning, and you know how that is. I mean, sometimes a team will either lose faith in itself or it'll expire or what have it, and you can kind of sense it in the air. And I'm just worried I sense it a little bit with those Nuggets.
Maybe that trade deadline will shake things up.
I think that there's a reason that there's these players being mentioned, like a Zach LaVine. I mean, I think the team recognizes that something has to change, even if it's lateral moves, just something to make it fresh. All right, we're going to get one super chat, James. Who's chiming in here? Psycho Blue says, B-Ball Cthulhu thought he was watching a rerun last night. He's talking, I believe, about the Suns game, because he's a Suns fan. A rerun. What would the rerun have been for the Suns? I'm not sure I understand this one, Legs.
More context to that. More context there.
Oh, well, there you go. Everybody, we appreciate you hanging out with us. We got just 2 shows for you next week. We're going to do a Monday show. We're going to take a Christmas break, and we'll be back on Friday. But you will want to hit that subscribe button, set alerts so that you never miss a show, so you can check in with us as we recap those Christmas games next week, which should be great. Everybody hit that like button. Have yourself a great weekend, and we'll see you next Monday.
All silly like the mayor.